The central question is whether whites have the right to organize for their own group interests or not.
That's preposterous! Have you even read Locke? Oh my god, I can't even! Have you even read Thomas Paine? Jesus Christ, do you even have authorities to appeal to? Sargon, I think your problem is you're full of shit.
Me Dore.
Hi, everybody, welcome back to the show. Now, I've covered this story before, but there's an update to it I'm going to give to you in a second. So you remember when we covered this, the FBI conducted coordinated raids against a Black Liberation Organization called the USSR. FBI's. So here it is. What's the date on this? It's hot. That was in August of 2022. And because what had happened is that the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, conducted a violent raid on the home of Omali Yeshitela, chairman of the U.S.-based African People's Socialist Party in St. Louis, Missouri. And here's how it got covered by the news.
Good evening, Keith. This is one of 7 properties owned by the Uhuru movement that was raided by the FBI last July. Now, a newly unsealed federal indictment charges 4 people here locally with being agents of the Russian government.
I ain't never worked for a Russian. Never, 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 never.
In his first local news conference on April 10th with the media regarding the raid on his home, Omali Yeshitela denied working with or for the Russian government.
This is ridiculous. You know it's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous.
But now an unsealed federal indictment charges Yeshitela, along with Jesse Neville, Joanne Hess, and Augustus Romaine, with acting as agents of Russia. The indictment charges they worked to spread Russian propaganda and to influence local elections. The indictment also says they spread information to back Russian aggression in Ukraine. The federal charges say the Uhurus worked with Russian agent Aleksander and took money from him to spread Russian propaganda on their radio station and digital platforms. Members of the Uhuru movement did not answer phone calls or text messages today, but the charges of Russian collusion are things the group has denied in the past when they spoke of the FBI raid on their property.
So they actually got convicted. So, but it was wild that what the judge said in the conviction. The judge said he is not inclined to give prison time in this case against the members. In a sentencing hearing, he said everything they did here was political speech. I eminently disagree with all of it. These people spit on this flag that actually protects them, and then he didn't protect them. He then convicted them under BS charges under BS law. The 4 were convicted in September trial on charges of conspiracy to act as agents of the Russian government without notifying the Attorney General. A jury delivered not guilty verdicts for the more serious charge of acting as Russian agents. The government accused the group of acting for 7 years on behalf of the Russian government. This is how crazy Russiagate got. And of course, this was all garbage. And so no jail time. Really? They're Russian agents. You don't want to send them to jail? It's just free speech. But anyway, so let me bring in 2 of the people. Jesse Neville is a chair of the Yuhu Solidarity Movement, organizing campaigns for white reparations to the African community, and a former mayoral candidate in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's a young anti-Zionist Jewish man focused on the history of Zionism, the development and use of international law, and the concept of genocide, and on the colonial theft of the land of Palestine. Also, McIlhany is a director of the media and communications work for the African People's Socialist Party and editor-in-chief of the Burning Spear newspaper. She was targeted in the 2022 FBI raids on the Uhuru movement, but never charged. In 2017, she ran for a seat on the St. Petersburg, Florida City Council and was profiled in Ebony magazine as a millennial of change. Please welcome both of you to the show.
Thanks so much for having us.
So now tell me, there's an update to this story, right? So they were convicted. What is the update?
Well, Jesse, do you want to go into that, or?
Sure, I can. Well, thank you again, Jimmy, for having us on, and thank you to all of your listeners as well for paying attention to this case and for putting a spotlight on this completely bogus absurd prosecution that the US government under the Biden administration carried out against the Uhuru movement. And just to further elaborate in terms of my role in this, I represent the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. So we work under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has been fighting for Black liberation for his entire life. And he is 83 years old. He was part of the Black Power movement of the 1960s and has fought to complete the Black Revolution ever since. And he created the Solidarity Movement that myself and Penny Hess, the other part of the Uhuru Three who was indicted, to organize white people to stand in solidarity with the struggle for Black liberation. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela was the primary target of this attack on the Uhuru movement, and the indictment of myself and Penny Hess was part of the attack on him and on the struggle for Black freedom. And as you stated, what happened last September in the trial, the US government called no actual witnesses during the trial. They called only FBI agents who came up and read text messages and emails and things like that. And they were destroyed under cross-examination by our brilliant legal team. And then we were able to introduce evidence showing the more than 50 years of history of the African People's Socialist Party advocating for reparations, speaking out against genocide and colonialism, long before this guy in Russia, who they claimed was the puppet master of the Uhuru movement, had even been born. So the jury came back with a not guilty verdict on the main charge, which carried a 10-year prison sentence, which charged the chairman and Penny and myself with being unregistered foreign agents of the Russian government, failing to notify the attorney general that we were Russian agents. They said they are not guilty of that, but they somehow came back with a guilty verdict that we had, quote, conspired to act as Russian agents without notifying the attorney general. In other words, we had conspired to do the thing that the same jury said we did not do. So it was a very illogical, inconsistent kind of verdict that clearly reflected the deliberately confusing and deceptive jury instructions and other nasty lies and tricks used by the prosecution. So we were convicted of the conspiracy charge, which carried a 5-year prison sentence. And then a few months later in December, we went down to Tampa, Florida for the sentencing. And as you mentioned, the judge said, no one's going to prison. And this was in response to a huge anti-colonial free speech movement. The courthouse was packed. People like yourself had been shining a light on this case and winning support for the right of freedom of speech. And the judge ended up not putting us in prison, but instead sentencing us to 3 years of probation, 300 hours of community service. So on June 16th, our legal team filed an appeal. We did file an appeal in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals to call for the conspiracy conviction to be reversed on the grounds that the indictment itself was a violation of the First Amendment. This indictment should never have been allowed to even happen because everything that they charged the chairman and the Uhuru Three with doing was free speech that is supposed to be protected by the First Amendment to the US Constitution. So that appeal has been filed, and we're going to continue to fight this case and take this on until we win.
And so why do you think that the judge would seem to be agreeing with you while disagreeing with your politics, agreeing that what you did was free speech, but then still find you guilty of conspiring to do a thing that the jury said you didn't do? That's even too contradictory for Russiagate, is it not? I mean, that seems crazy. Why do you think the judge did that?
Director.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the judge had even stated, his confliction over being conflicted over, issuing this sentencing and just wanting to follow the law, like all these proceedings, just wanting to follow the law. And of course, everything that we've done and all the work that, that went into this verdict, the outcome of this verdict, which is, not necessarily satisfactory because we still have to struggle against this bogus conviction. But in terms of ending up with no jail time or any of the $250,000 fine that loomed over all of their heads, which their intention was to crush our movement and crush the work that we do in terms of transforming, like materially transforming the conditions of the Black community inside the U.S., doing what the U.S. government, local politicians refuse to do. So they wanted to crush those efforts. And, the judge being representative of, and carrying out, what ultimately what the government it was trying to do. That was his ability to essentially not step on the toes of the U.S. government, while having to acknowledge it was a forced acknowledgement because of the profound work that had been achieved in really exposing that this was a contradiction for the U.S. government's own constitution. It was a contradiction that they had to confront. And so, he was treading lightly, essentially, and, issuing this sentence. So.
And what do you think? Why do you think the Biden administration and their Justice Department had it in for you? What did this serve? How did the prosecuting these Black socialists under the guise of Russiagate, basically, which is an obviously bogus charge, and in fact, even the jury and the judge saw it. What was in it for the Biden administration to do this, do you think?
Well, as I mentioned, their objective was to crush our movement, just as it had done in the 1960s, because this is not attacks against Black liberation or organizations is not a new phenomenon in U.S. history. This is a historic process. And, the African People's Socialist Party, founded by Chairman Omali Yeshitela, was founded to complete that struggle that had emerged from the Black Power movement of the 1960s. And with, the Biden administration was just it's just this modern day iteration of, a government that wants to crush resistance that's coming from Black people who are critiquing the conditions, not just critiquing the conditions, but actually setting out to transform, our own conditions and to do for ourselves. And, that's what the Uhuru movement has been successful in doing, in developing, economic and political institutions that actually empower Black people rather than having us in this perpetual state of begging, relying on, this government to come and bring resources, aid, and things like that. We've done it for ourselves. And that in turn exposes, how the government refuses to do those things, with this unlimited access to resources, how it refuses to do those things. So I think, this is more about kind of divide and conquer and suppress Black movements that are actually empowering their people. So the government and the establishment wants to keep those people subservient and begging for scraps at the table. And then when these Black socialists actually develop, let's say, farmers markets and grocery stores and schooling and their own newspapers and radio stations, they can't have that, because that shows that you don't need to be reliant on the government. You don't need to be controlled by them. And very much in the same way USAID around the world, especially in Africa, controls those people with their aid. This is kind of the same thing, and they were losing control of this Black movement. And so this was a way to, if you can't beat them, prosecute them and try to get them disbanded and thrown in jail. Right? That's basically what it was. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to dry out all of our resources. We had to, raise funds for our attorneys, all the legal fees. So we have all these economic programs happening, and rather than supporting these institutions, we are now spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees. And also they're attacking the economic programs. They're shutting down bank accounts. They're rescinding grants, that had been previously given, to different institutions of our movement. And, so it's not just this assault they were making on our, because we broke some kind of law. It was a clear political assault on, on the work that we are engaged in. So, that's what they wanted to do, was disrupt everything, that we're doing.
And so is the Trump administration continuing with the same policy as the Biden administration as regards to you?
I mean, I think that we see, really profound crisis because those who expected something different under a new administration, for us, we criticize the whole thing. We say that, there's this ruling class, there's different sectors of the ruling class, and they're serving ruling class interests. And to have, and so we see like intensified assault on, free speech activity, especially when it comes to anti-colonial free speech activity, people getting assaulted and, jailed and deported and things like that for talking about Palestine and, on the one hand. And so we see this kind of intensification, if you will, or more publicized attacks being made on the First Amendment, which we said was going to happen if they were successful in this case. This is why we said it can't go to trial, because it opens the door to the government overreaching and attacking free speech activity.
Which is exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so what is the next step? So now you filed an appeal to get these bogus convictions overturned. And so is there a timeline? How fast does this move, and what's the next step?
Jesse.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I want to answer that, and I just want to kind of preface it by saying I just completely agree with everything that's just been discussed. And just a point about the relationship between the attack on the Black liberation movement and the struggle for African liberation in this country and free speech. Because when Chairman Omali Yeshitela launched the Hands Off Uhuru campaign as a counteroffensive against these attacks, he said from the beginning, this wasn't just a defense campaign, it was a counteroffensive, an anti-colonial counteroffensive. He became the champion for freedom of speech in this country, and people across the ideological and political spectrum rallied behind the Uhuru movement and behind Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I mean, you had Tucker Carlson, interviewing the chairman, and many, many other organizations, hundreds of organizations and individuals across the ideological and political spectrum. And it makes sense, because one of the points the chairman has made is that when the First Amendment was written, the African people in this country were enslaved, were on plantations. So who else but the Black liberation movement, African people, would be at the vanguard of the fight for free speech? Who else but the people who did not have those rights to begin with? So I think it makes sense, and it's so important that that this is happening, and that people can see that this is the fight for freedom of speech, for anti-colonial freedom of speech. And that continues to be the case with this appeal. The appeal is not just to get our conspiracy conviction overturned. The appeal is to set a precedent. It can actually set a political and legal precedent that says that the United States government, at least in theory, would be prohibited from carrying out another prosecution like this, that they cannot charge somebody with a federal crime for speech simply by alleging that the speaker has some relationship with a foreign government, because that's the dangerous precedent that they have set with this prosecution. This is actually the first time in legal history that we're aware of that the United States government has used this particular law to charge anyone purely on the basis of speech. They didn't accuse us of espionage. They didn't accuse us of, trading secrets or, foreign lobbying or anything like that, or money laundering or anything. It was purely on the basis of speech. And that's the precedent they're trying to set. And overturning that is the precedent that we are working to set. So the next stage is there's a request by our attorneys for oral arguments. And that could take time. The legal process is very, very slow. So, there will be time that goes by before we hear back from the 11th Circuit about whether or not they're going to grant oral arguments. But as soon as we do hear that, we'll be putting the word out and inviting people to come to the court, which I believe is going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, to be present for those oral arguments. And in the meantime, the Hands Off Uhuru campaign is not just sitting around waiting. It is launching a political campaign that we want to invite everybody listening to this show to pay attention to and be a part of, a campaign to demand that the United States government repeal these laws. These laws are purely, explicitly political laws that were created as weapons of repression. And I'm talking about the Foreign Agent Registration Act, this other similar law that they used against us, and this conspiracy statute that they've used time and time again to charge especially African, Palestinian, indigenous, and other colonized peoples with what essentially amount to thought crimes. You don't have to actually have done anything, but if they can present the idea that you thought about it, they can convict you with conspiracy. So this is a campaign that Hands Off Uhuru is going to be launching to demand the abolition, the repealing of these repressive and anti-democratic and illegitimate laws. And we feel like that's really important, that the US government has to be on the defensive. And this is part of continuing that pushback. Well, we certainly wish you luck. This is one of, a very important fight, especially in this day and age right now, what's happening. Donald Trump administration promised an era of free speech. And of course, that's the exact opposite of what's happening. They are continuing to prosecute people for thought crimes. And so this would be a big deal if you win this. So, I'm sure everybody, and you did bring together quite a coalition of people from all across the political spectrum to see what was happening to you. So I imagine that will continue. That's why I'm still covering it. So best of luck to you. Anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in too and say that because I mentioned part of the attacks wasn't just FBI raids, but it was attacks on our economic institutions. And one of those institutions is a radio station, Black Power 96.3 FM. And this was actually one of the institutions that had applied for, got approved for, was in the process of signing a contract for ARPA relief funds from COVID. From the COVID era, and it was for a backup generator and also accessibility equipment, because the station manager is 100% blind. And the radio station is based in St. Petersburg, Florida, hurricane prone, power outage prone. So these were really important resources, up a little over $100,000 in total in grant funds awarded to this station. And the Pinellas County Commission, they had like a secret meeting and then publicly announced that they were taking it back, that they're taking the funds back. And their official document said that they couldn't find a real need for this radio station to have access to those resources. But in minutes from this secret meeting, they were talking about the Russian agents and, they don't like what Black Power 96 says and things like that. So it's a clear violation of free speech, freedom of association. And so Black Power 96 filed a lawsuit and that law in federal court, Tampa federal court. And the judge moved in favor of the Pinellas County Commission to close the lawsuit. However, we submitted an appeal. And the 11th Circuit did agree to the request for oral arguments that's set for November in Jacksonville, Florida. And we actually have a webinar to discuss it coming up on August 7th. And the lawyer representing that lawsuit will be speaking further about it. So just want to encourage people to follow that case. blackpower96.org/web is the event link. And, because that's directly connected to this, and all of it is precedent setting. So really important, especially with what's happening with public funding, radio, all this stuff.
You would think that a story this important would be a top story in Reason magazine. You'd think it would be all the people who claim to be libertarians and constitutionalists, and you would think this would be front page news. So hopefully we can, help raise awareness, and maybe it will become soon, because it definitely is the issue of our time right now. That's for sure. I really appreciate both of you taking time to inform our audience today. Akili and I, and Jesse Novell, thank you so much for taking time. And we're with you in spirit. And if there's anything else we could do for you, let us know. And good luck. Please keep us up to date on the progress of these lawsuits.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay. Over to Steph.
All right. You know what? You want to take a break, or you want to just keep going? Sure. All right. Here we go, folks. Let's see what I have so far. Let's see. That was pretty good, Jim. The Jimmy Dore Show. This is from Savage. Hey, Savage. I'm not sure. I noticed that, what you're saying here. Please revert to displaying our individual channel names and not our channel handle. Did you make this decision to unmask everyone's handle? Or was it YouTube's doing? I have no control over that. Our moderators have no control over that. The show doesn't have any control about that, but we can bring it up to the next time we speak to YouTube but I started to notice, I think that was on Friday. Hey, making everyone type each other's full handle just to message each other in the YouTube chat is annoying as F. FYI, please fix this immediately. S'il vous plaît. Is that, how would you pronounce Plait?
Plate. S'il vous plaît.
S'il vous plaît. Thanks for your attention to this matter. Savage, no can do. I've got no control over that. If I know you like using Jews instead of YouTube and stuff like that. If Jews plunge the planet into the world var, then the result will not be the Bolshevization of the earth and thus the victory of Jew, but their ... H January 30th, 1939. So is that Hitler? Savage.
You have a lot of Ukrainian fans or something? That didn't sound like English first language to me.
All right, here we go. And by the way, just wanted to say, we were at Oxnard last night, and it was tons of fun. Thank you for the people that came out. There are a couple people that were there from our show from, I think, 2 years ago, and they're like, "Where's Kurt?" So just so you know, they missed you last night in Oxnard, beautiful Oxnard, California. It was a great show.
I like that club. That's a good club.
That was
it
fun.
is a nice club. All the
they do
improvs,
everything right.
All the improv should be set up like that. I like from the moment you get there, you enter right from the parking lot into the green room. You don't have to go through the club. It's so nice, and they have that great cheese quesadilla. I got to tell you, it's a great cheese quesadilla. It was the thin quesadilla,
and the salsa that they served with it.
The salsa, there was a green salsa. It's fantastic.
With tomatillo.
And then they have the great spinach artichoke dip too.
Oh, forget it! I love it.
So those are two big things. I remember food, and so I remember that. Anyway, then everybody's asking for Kurt, which was nice to see.
All right,
Derp with Kurt coming out Tuesday.
Derp with Kurt coming out Tuesday.
All right, here we go. Let me read one more. Hey, Jimmy, I really haven't